Melorio, Oberyn's paramour Elarias and, their respective children, Rhaenys, Aegon, Visenya, Rolla, Viserys and Daenerys stood at the head of Elia's side of the September. Whilst behind Baelor were Father, Rhea, Malara, Garth, Gunthor and Humphrey. As well as Aeleri, Mace, their children and Mace's mother Olenna. Though Baelor was glad that Aeleri had come for his wedding, he was less ecstatic for the attendance of his good brother and his good brother's mother. For they had made it no secret at how they wanted him to use his upcoming marriage to Elia to try and ensure that Baelor's niece would one day be wed to Crown Prince Aegon and not Lyanna Stark. The savage daughter of Eddard Stark must not wed the Crown Prince. It is a disgrace. Her father is a traitor and caused the deaths of a great many Reachman, Mace said with passion. I did not influence Elia, Mace. Not even the young wolf did that. It was Elia's decision and hers alone. And he was the one who led and started the victorious campaign that did have us win the war, Baelor pointed out. Even so, my son has the right of it, Baelor. He killed thousands of Reachmen in his rebellion, said Olenna Tyrell. And that is cause to prevent this betrothal from continuing, enquired Baelor. Do you not want to see your beautiful niece become queen? Mace demanded. Baelor rolled his eyes before he raised his voice. Mace. For God's sake, what do you think would happen if I was even successful in convincing Elia to put aside the betrothal? How would the Starks react? They can be compensated. All they care for is gold. And they can marry off their children to other lords paramount, but not to House Targaryen. Not when they have not been loyal, not like House Tyrell. Mace, have you forgotten Lenal Baratheon and how he rose up in rebellion? Thousands died. And how many thousands more would die if you or I insulted the honor of House Stark? You said it yourself, thousands died in the Northern Rebellion. How many more would die if we broke this betrothal? Baelor snapped. The two were shocked by Baelor's outburst before he calmed down. Besides, Elia has always wanted to share grandchildren with her best friend from her childhood, Ashura Dane, wife of Eddard Stark, Baelor added. Then convince her to wed Princess Rhaenys or Visenya to wed Stark's eldest son, Mace suggested. And insult the Arryns or the Tullys as well as the Starks. You would have us make more enemies than we need. And for what? For the small chance of Margaery being queen. Baelor retorted before finally ending the conversation. Baelor blinked away the annoying memories of arguing with his good brother and his mother whilst holding Elia's hands and basking in the warmth of her presence. You may now cloak the bride under your protection, said His Holiness. Baelor gently unclasped her martel cloak before passing it to her friend, Lara Blackmont, and then unclasping his own cloak and wrapping it around Elia's shoulders. My king. My queens. My lords and ladies. We stand here in the sight of gods and men to witness the union of husband and wife. One flesh, one heart, one soul, now and forever. He began tying a ribbon of the orange colors of House Martell and the grey colors of House Hightower on it. Let it be known that Elia Martell and Baelor Hightower are one heart, one flesh, one soul. Cursed be he who would seek to tear them asunder. His Holiness outstretched his arms as he addressed all gathered in the great September. Whilst Baelor felt lost as he gazed into Elia's eyes. In the sight of the seven, I hereby seal these two souls, binding them as one for eternity. He paused and looked down at Baelor and at Elia. Now look upon each other and say the words. That part is easy enough. For I have imagined saying the words to her for years now. Even when she was wed to Rhaegar. But now, that day has finally come. Baelor beamed as he gazed at her. Father, smith, warrior, mother, maiden, crone, stranger, they said together. I am hers and she is mine, from this day until the end of my days, said Baelor. I am his and he is mine, from this day until the end of my days, said Elia. She said the words, Baelor thought as he gulped. He turned to face all those gathered. With this kiss, I pledge my love, he said nervously. Baelor leant in and shared a longing and affectionate kiss with Elia. This is truly the best day of my life. And nothing will ever change that. Notes. The happy ending I enjoy writing, for Baelor to be married to the love of his life. And for Elia to have the happy and loving marriage she never got with Rhaegar. Though Baelor just manages to tolerate his brother-in-law's desperation for Margaery to be queen and still arrogantly thinks little of the North and House Stark. Chapter 149, The New Way. Summary. The Iron Fleet return home, in time for Quayan's funeral. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. Harlon 16. You go where you belong, father. I am just glad that you could go to the drowned god's hall from the waters here. The waters of home. Of the Iron Islands. What is dead may never die. But rises again. Harder and stronger. Harlon watched as father was taken aboard a driftwood frame, wrapped in seaweed. He stood with Donnell, Quentin, Victorian, Aragon, Aaron, Robin, Melissa, Alanis, Theon, Asher and Mylaira. All captains and lords of the Iron Islands had come to attend the funeral of father. Before he descended to the drowned god's hall to feast and drink for eternity and be eternally served by mermaids. Tal the thrice drowned stood on the edge of the rocks, overseeing as father was pushed onto his final voyage. Onto the waters that he might descend to the drowned god's hall. He who dwells beneath the waves, take your servant Quayan back beneath the waves. Feed the creatures of your kingdom on his flesh. Pull his bones down to your depths to rest beside his ancestors and his children. What is dead may never die, said all gathered on the rocky beaches of Pike. But rises again. Harder and stronger, boomed Harlon as he made the final push. Father's driftwood frame drifted out onto the waters, as waves crashed against it. All that you did for House Greyjoy and for our people was not in vain, father. You began a legacy. A legacy which continues with me. And shall continue with Theon and Asher. The new way has supplanted the old way. For good. Harlon walked with his family and led their walk back to Pike. Though his first act as Lord of the Iron Islands upon returning home was to arrange father's funeral, now he was to host his bannermen in the Great Hall of Pike. I am the Greyjoy of Pike now. But how am I to rule? I have spent over 20 years at sea. Sailing, killing, taking pirate ships, raiding strongholds and in recent moons, raiding 2 cities as the Ironborn of old had done. He sat on his seat at the high table with Alanis sat beside him on his left and both Theon and Asher sat on his right. Donnell, Victorian, Mylaira, Robin and Melissa filled the seats of the high table. Victorian's daughter Thalia was a girl of 2 and therefore not old enough to take a seat on the high table or to be involved with court life at Pike. Victorian had told Harlon how he would raise her. I will raise Thalia the same way that you raise Asher. No daughter of mine will be another man's salt wife. She will be taught to sail, fight and command. To be a warrior that may one day be the first lady captain of the Iron Fleet, said Victorian. I would be glad to have any daughter of yours in the Iron Fleet, if she can fight and sail like you, brother Harlon remarked. And as for his youngest brother, Sir Robin Greyjoy, he told him what he had spoken of with his mother. When I return for King's Landing, brother, I will take mother with me. She wants to return to her people and to her ways. And she will help me adapt to the ways of the mainlanders and being the master of ships, he explained. Well, remember who you are, Robin. You are a Greyjoy and in your blood is iron, salt and sea, said Harlon as he patted him on the back. Harlon cleared his throat before standing up to face the bannermen of the Iron Islands. Comrades. Ironborn. All were silent as Harlon raised his voice. He looked around at all the bannermen. All of whom had paid the iron price for a great many things in the war. He saw that as he looked around. From the new pieces of armor many wore. From the bejeweled daggers, swords and axes they wore at their belts. And he noticed how Gorald Goodbrother now wielded the Lyson House Rugaria's Valyrian steel sword, Truth. Which he had redecorated in King's Landing with a hilt of black war horns and a pommel of a black hammer's head. We all return victorious from the war against the Triarchy and the Black Fires. It was a glorious war. Let it never be said that no captain nor ironborn warrior did not pay the iron price, whether it be for gold, for armor, for arms or for glory. Harlon roared. At which they all roared and cheered loudly, with some banging their tankards on the tables. But now we come to a time of peace. My lord father wanted to end the old way and replace it with his new way, he said, before pausing, allowing his words to sink in. When none dared to challenge him, he continued. And follow the new way, we shall. For now, we have the means to provide for our people rather than resort to raiding, reaving and slaughter. For how are we to take up arms and raid and reave the 7 kingdoms of Westeros when they have great warriors and commanders such as Eddard the Young Wolf, Robert the Strong Storm, Brynden the Blackfish, Jaime the young lion or Oberyn the red viper. He let those words resonate with the bannerman. Again, to challenge those who would oppose him in favor of the old way. And again, none challenged him. We shall keep the new way. And bring a time of peace for the Iron Islands. What we have claimed with the iron price is ours and for our sons to take on after us. And what we earn in trade is ours. That we might never need to even think of the old way ever again, Harlon stated loudly and clearly, daring any man to call him a craven or a traitor. But none did. Good. Now to end things on a pleasant note. But, comrades, I have spoken a plenty. For this feast is to honor Quayan the old Kraken. And what a warrior he was. And what a captain he was. May the mermaid serve his every want in the drowned god's hall. And may we all aspire to such a fate in the drowned god's hall. Harlon roared before taking up a tankard and draining it fully down his throat without pause. Those in the great hall now cheered, laughed, drank and ate loudly again. I pray that there will be peace. I would not have what father strove to accomplish have been for nothing. Notes. Harlon makes it abundantly clear that there will be no following of the old way and that the reformed new way is the only way. Chapter 150, The Young Wolf's Return. Summary. Ned returns home to Ashura and to their children. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. Ashura 19. Ashura beamed as she stood over the cots in which Halric and Deanna slept whilst old Nan read stories to Elionor, and Prydain was taken for his first sword lessons with Sir Roderick. Both Halric and Deanna were a year old now. And now the war was over. The war which had seen all kingdoms of Westeros united against the Triarchy and the Black Fires. But they were safe. Elia and her children were safe. Arthur was safe. And Ned was safe. The door creaked behind her as it opened. Lady Stark. Ashura turned around to see Maester Wallers. My lady, Lord Stark returns to Winterfell within the hour. Thank the gods, Ashura thought with excitement as she stood up. Get down to Sir Roderick and Prydain and bring both to the Great Hall, Wallers, she said. Yes, my lady, he replied before leaving. Ashura walked to Elionor and took her hand. She turned to Ros and Melania. Take Halric and Deanna from their cots. My lady, they said before they gently picked them up. By the time that Ashura, Prydain, Elionor, Halric, Deanna, Maester Wallers, Veon and Sir Roderick had set foot on the courtyard of the Great Keep, already the rest of the household were stood there, waiting for the arrival of Ned. It has been an entire year since he left to begin his campaign of shock and awe upon the Triarchy and the Black Fires. Never has there been a campaign had such a string of resounding and undeniable victories and with no defeat. Ashura beamed as she saw the gates open and Ned ride through and into the courtyard of the Great Keep. Whilst Maester Wallers and Sir Roderick both kept watch over her children, Ashura happily walked to Ned's side as he dismounted from his horse and turned with an equally elated smile to Ashura. Ash, my love, he said as he hugged her and yearningly kissed her. Gods, I have missed you, my love, she thought as her tongue fought with his. When they finally broke from the kiss and the hug, she beamed as she faced him. How are you? She asked eagerly. I am all the better for seeing you and our children, he replied with a beaming smile before glancing at Prydain, Elionor, Halric and Deanna. Ned walked with Ashura to their household, holding hands as they did so. He smiled as he greeted them, men and women he had known since he was a child. Before he greeted his children, Prydain smiled as he ran to Ned and hugged his leg. Papa, he said excitedly. Ashura beamed with awe as Ned took a knee and hugged Prydain and kissed his forehead. He gently hugged Elionor, Halric and Deanna before walking inside with them. Ashura and Ned walked together to the nursery where old Nan smiled at Ned before telling him, I'll read them some stories. Gods knows that they will soon grow up listening to your own stories. Ned is too modest for that. He would never want stories nor songs to be told of him. In spite of all that he has done. Together, they left for the training yard, where Ned beamed as Prydain was receiving lessons on swordplay from Sir Roderick. How is he doing? He asked Sir Roderick. He is a fast learner, my lord. I have no doubt that it will not be the last I see of such skills and talents, he complimented. Which only made Ashura beam with pride. That sounds like the Stark and Dane trays combined have done wonders. Finally, they arrived in Ned's solar. Without words, Ned sat down, followed by Ashura sitting on his lap. Sat down, the two shared a long kiss on his seat. Gods, I need this. To feel his lips on mine. And to feel him inside me, she thought as she pressed her soft hands against his hard and rough face as she kissed him and battled his tongue with her own. Whilst Ned's hands wandered over the fabrics of her dress that covered her breasts as well as the fabrics which covered her ass. Before their loving embrace was broken at the sound of a knock on the door. Damn. Why can we not just tell them to fuck off? We deserve a moment to ourselves. Ashura stood up from Ned's lap and sat down next to him whilst holding his hand before Ned looked up at the door. Enter, said Ned. Maester Wallace entered. He had a letter in his hands. Forgive me, my lord. My lady. This letter has just arrived from King's Landing, he said. He passed the letter to Ned. Ashura looked at the seal to the seal of the three-headed dragon of House Targaryen. Could it be from Elia? Ned broke the seal. It is from Elia, he said as Maester Wallace took his leave. It is, asked Ashura. Gods, it has been nearly 3 years since last I saw Elia. Not since Ned and I arrived for Rhaegar's coronation. Ned held the letter so that she could read it with him. Ned and Ash. I hope that this letter finds you well. I trust that you are resting in Winterfell after all that has transpired in the war. Gods, new and old, know that you deserve it more than any other, Ned. But now I write to confirm the documents. Once Aegon is crowned king and Lyanna has turned 5 and 10, we shall host the royal wedding in the Red Keep. I can only hope that this fulfills the previously unfulfilled pact of ice and fire that Targaryens of the past did not fulfill. Though the North has always isolated itself from the rest of the 7 kingdoms, the exception being your late father, Ned, I hope that you can continue on that path. I understand that you were reluctant to do so during the reign of my late husband. But now that he is no longer with us, I hope that you can see it in your heart to continue what you have started. And bring what you have brought to the North and to your allies to the Reach and to the Crown Lands. And especially King's Landing. Gods knows that we need a Sure in the capital. With this, I hope that never again will the realm think of the North as a land of tree-worshipping savages and that they will show gratitude to the North and that House Stark enjoys a lasting respect from all houses of the South as it deserves. Yours faithfully. Elia. Ashura turned to Ned as she finished reading the letter. Ned, she asked. Ned was frowning. The likes of Mace Tyrell and other southern lords were mocking the North and insulting House Stark and Lyanna when Elia announced that Aegon and Lyanna would wed one day, he stated. Well then, this is a chance to prove them wrong. To settle the score tenfold with them. By building afresh across all the Reach and the Crown Lands. By proving to them all that the blood of Brandon the Builder is in House Stark and that House Stark can do what no Targaryen nor other southern house has done in centuries and millennia, she replied. As much as I would wish nothing more than to slap the face of any man who dared to insult my daughter, I know that this is the best revenge. To prove them wrong and to see for themselves all that Ned has built in the South, every day, for the rest of their lives. And to remember that what they can do, the North can do 10 times better. Notes. Elia knows that the improvements Ned has built are essential, and that she wants Aegon's reign to begin with these all being completed. And from this, the North emerges as the most powerful kingdom of all Westeros. Chapter 151, History. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. An excerpt from the Regency of Aegon VI by Archmaester Dection. The Regency of His Grace, King Aegon, the 6th of his name was anything but straightforward. Not when he had become the king at the tender age of 3. And the realm had only just emerged victorious from the long and bloody War of 8 Nations, which did pit the 7 kingdoms against the 7 free cities of Pentos, Norphos, Qohor, Volantis, Myr, Teosh and Lys, and saw the death of the last of the Black Fyres. Well, at least of the male Black Fyres. For Maegor the Mauler's widow gave birth to a daughter whom she named Delaera, but has adopted the name of her family as opposed to that of the child's father. King Rhaegar, the first of his name, died from an infection of a wound, inflicted from cutting it on the armrest of the Iron Throne. But soon after his death, the realm might have descended into chaos, after only recovering from the chaos sown during the reign of Aerys, the second of his name. But from the chaos, Queen Regent Elia of House Martell and her good mother, Queen Dowager Rulla of House Targaryen, did emerge as the ones to end this chaos. By rewarding all deserving houses that did play the most important parts in the war which saw the end of the Triarchy and of the usurping Black Fira menace which did threaten the Seven Kingdoms. The Iron Islands, ruled by Lord Harlon of House Greyjoy, was rewarded for its efforts with royal consent to build trading posts on the Westerlands and in the Reach, that they could contribute to their people and to their economy through lawful trade as opposed to war, reaving and raiding as they had done in the past, only to be ceased thanks to the efforts of Lord Harlon and his wise father, Lord Quayan Greyjoy. But perhaps, most significantly of all was the North, ruled by Eddard Stark. For the Lord of Winterfell, then known as the Young Wolf, was perhaps the greatest warrior and military commander of the time. For he had slain hundreds of warriors and knights on the battlefield and personally commanded and won 8 great battles, including the legendary Battle of Mimebatass, where it is said that nearly 250,000 men fought on the blooded battlefield at the now ruined Lysen fortress. Lord Stark was rewarded with the consent of the Regency Council and the Small Council to award the lordships of the city of Sharksburth and the castles of Wolf's Den, Windshroud and Snowhilm to those he deemed worthy, which in the end, he had awarded to his sons Halric, Ottos, Brandon and Rukan, forming the noble houses Seastock of Wolf's Den, Wistark of Windshroud, Ristark of Snowhilm and Halstark of Sharksburth. And then, in an address to all gathered noble families, from knightly families to the families of the Lord's paramountcy, the Queen Regent declared the betrothal agreements between House Targaryen and to the following houses, Lannister, Tully, Arryn and Stark. The arrangement was for King Aegon to wed the eldest daughter of House Stark, the Lady Lyanna. In a match made moons after the king's death, the widowed Queen Regent had wed again. This time to her girlhood friend, Sir Baelor of House Hightower, heir to Old Town. And yet, shock came to House Targaryen, when the Queen Regent became heavy with child. Grand Maester Pycelle admitted that he had made a terrible mistake when he had determined that the Queen Regent was infertile after giving birth to the king and to Princess Visenya. The Queen Regent has given birth to her children Morgan and Loria Hightower, which absolutely dispelled all rumors that she was infertile. Why did the esteemed Grand Maester with years of faithful service make such a mistake? Perhaps after seeing the Queen Regent almost die giving birth to her twins, he had lied to spare her the pain and risk of death once again. Or did he indeed make an error? It cannot be known for certainty, for the Grand Maester passed away from disease in the stomach and bowels. There still is considerable debate over the betrothal made with House Stark. Many said it was only because of all that Eddard Stark had done in the war as a war. That Eddard Stark's lady wife, Ashura of House Dane, was a childhood friend and still a close friend of the Queen Regent. Or that it was to finally honor the unfulfilled pact of ice and fire made between Jaehaerys Valerian and Cregan Stark during the Dance of the Dragons. Whatever the truth behind the matter, it had caused a great deal of anger to many houses of the South, especially those of the Reach that did not stand to benefit from the war's end. And yet, apart from fighting in the capture of Lies, they had done next to nothing in the war. The realm currently awaits for the long-awaited wedding between our king and Lady Lyanna Stark, known as the Star of the North, for her supposed legendary beauty. And the realm has already seen the wedding of Princess Rhaenys of House Targaryen to Sir Harold of House Arryn, the second in line to the Lord Paramountcy of the Vale and the Lordship of the Eyrie. But as well as the royal wedding, 2 more large-scale weddings are to take place. Between Princess Daenerys of House Targaryen and Sir Loron of House Lannister, second in line to the Lord Paramountcy of the Westerlands and the Lordship of Casterly Rock. As well as the wedding of Princess Visenya of House Targaryen to Sir Tristyfor of House Tully, the second in line to the Lord Paramountcy of the Riverlands and the Lordship of Riverrun. Notes. Would you look at that? Pycelle. Dying so soon after Elia successfully gives birth. Well, I am sure that that was just a coincidence that the symptoms were the same as the tears of Lies. And that Oberyn the Red Viper was in the capital also. Chapter 152, Epilogue. Summary. The Pact of Ice and Fire is finally honored. It only took a century and a half. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. Epilogue. Lyanna Stark, Isabel Drummond. Gods, the day has finally come, Lyanna thought as she held father's hand and walked with him through the Red Keep's courtyard. Lyanna soon entered the wheelhouse with mother and father. She stepped inside with Deanna, Serena and Arya. The latter two were already betrothed to Domeric Bolton and Brandon Dustin respectively. Arya still had no intention of marrying yet or even being referred to as a lady of House Stark. Prydain had ridden ahead, upset that Winifred was in Winterfell with their newly born son, Torrhen. But as father always maintained, there must always be a Stark in Winterfell. And Winifred would never ever wish to be apart from their child. Especially when he had only been born a few weeks before they had left for King's Landing, for Elyana's wedding. Elyana beamed as she looked around the city from where she was sat in the wheelhouse. All whilst the small folk of King's Landing cheered for her, waving at her as they rode past. For which, Elyana began to wave back. I have done nothing to deserve their cheers, Elyana felt as she looked around and waved. Admiring your new home, sister, asked Deanna with a smirk. She replied. I miss Winterfell already. This climate is just too warm for me. I feel as if I shall melt. This southern sunshine does not suit you, sister. You would have been better off in the north rather than stuck in a place such as this where the rats of the court would shake your hand and stab you in the back if it meant just advancing up higher a little in court, Deanna commented. And life in the Dread Fort shall be bliss for you, sister, asked Elyana. Better life there than here. Deanna commented. It shouldn't be so bad. Aegon is a good man. And it helps with the fact that he is very handsome and kind. Elia is one of the nicest people I have ever met. Though I already knew that from the stories mother told me as a child. Ever since she was 7, Elyana had been told of the betrothal established between father and Queen Mother Elia and how she would be Aegon's queen once she had come of age. And many young lords of the north had wept when they were told the news during feasts as Elyana had begun to flower, Prydain had told her. Elyana had already chosen her ladies-in-waiting for when she had wed Aegon and been crowned queen. She had chosen her friends from growing up in Winterfell and attending feasts around the north and in Storm's End, the Eyrie, Riverrun, Sunspear and Casterly Rock. Beth Castle, Cousin Jocelyn Baratheon, Roslyn Frey, Myranda Royce, Tira Toland, Jane Westerling. I hate it here, Arya commented. What makes you hate it so, little sister, asked Serena. Everything, Arya muttered in disgust. Such as, asked Elyana. It's just so ugly. Even from a distance away, it is hideous to look at. And when you are inside the city, it is uglier, she muttered. Just be glad that father had sewers and aqueducts built here, Arya. Had he not, the city would still be stinking worse than a privy after there has been a fire, Deanna commented with a jesting grin. The wheelhouse came to a stop. Elyana looked out and saw father climb out of the first wheelhouse and open the door of hers. He beamed at her as he held his hand out for her. Elyana took his hand and climbed down from the wheelhouse. Whilst Deanna, Serena and Arya were helped down by Prydain, Rickon and Sir Roger Ryswell, father's new guard captain. And Rickon was awaiting to formally be made Lord of Snowhilm and head of House Ristock, where he would wed Eddara Tallheart. Elyana looked around the grounds of the Great September. From where she was stood, there was a clear and straight path to the steps of the Great September of Baelor. And yet, the path was made straight by small picket fences placed between the gold cloaks stood guard and the small folk cheering and clapping. And at the foot of the staircase, were 2 knights of the King's Guard. And how are you? Father asked with a beaming smile. Nervous, father, she replied uneasily. Father smiled as they walked together towards the steps of the Great September of Baelor. It is only when we are afraid that we discover how brave we are. I found that out for myself when I first began to court your mother. And when I became Lord of Winterfell, he said. I cannot imagine what the latter must have been like. Elyana felt nothing but sadness for father after all that he endured when Aes the Mad had murdered grandfather Rickard and Uncle Brandon. And yet, she found it strange how the gentle, kind and loving father who raised her was the fear of all the South when he marched from the Riverlands to the Crown Lands with the Northern Army and crushed 4 Southern armies and became known as the Young Wolf. As they walked towards the Great September, Elyana beamed when she saw one of the King's Guard stood at the entrance. He beamed back in reply. Elyana, hello. Hello, Uncle Arthur, she replied, a beaming smile on her face before she began to walk up the steps with father. They soon entered the September's interior. And Elyana looked around at her surroundings. At the banners of House Stark and House Targaryen hanging from the rooftop. And at those gathered on her side of the September and those gathered on Aegon's side of the September. Mother, Diana, Serena, Arya, Prydain, Halric, his wife Jane Poole, Artos, Brandon and Rickon were stood at the front, awaiting father to join them. And behind them were Uncle Robert, Aunt Lyanna, cousins Gendry, Argella, Edric and Jocelyn, Gendry's wife Tylana Caron and Argella's betrothed, Donell Swan. And on Aegon's side of the September, were his sisters Visenya and Loria, his brother Morgan, his stepfather Baelor Hightower, his aunt Daenerys, his mother Elia and his grandmother Rolla. But Lyanna wanted to frown in reply when she saw many southern girls and ladies, some were old enough to be her mother, and how they frowned at her or smiled contemptuously at her. "This is my wedding day today, you frilly, stupid, southern girls. Don't let your jealousy become my problem as it had done for Unwin Peake when his daughter didn't become queen for Aegon the Unlucky." Father seemed to sense how she was feeling towards the southern ladies and how they looked at her. "Do not worry about them. Remember who you are. Now, show them a Stark of Winterfell," he whispered as they walked up towards the altar of the Seven, where he beamed as he passed her on to Aegon before he walked back to join mother and her siblings. Lyanna beamed as she held Aegon's hands and kept her eyes focused on his. "Gods, he is so handsome," she thought before she noticed the High Septon, who looked as though he was frowning at her also. "Don't cause problems here, old man. I may not be of your faith, but I am still a Stark of Winterfell. You may bring the bride under your protection," the High Septon announced. Aegon unclasped her Stark embroidered cloak and passed it to Serena, who was standing nearby to take it. She took it and walked back to her place whilst Aegon unclasped his Targaryen cloak and gently clasped it around her whilst smiling nervously at her. "My king, my queens, my lords and ladies, we stand here in the sight of gods and men to witness the union of husband and wife. One heart, one flesh, one soul. Now and forever." And then he began to tie a ribbon of Targaryen black and Stark grey around their holding hands. As he finished, he continued, "Let it be known that Aegon Targaryen and Lyanna Stark are one heart, one flesh and one soul. Cursed be he who would seek to tear them asunder." I doubt it. When it seems to me that the only ones who would seek to tear us asunder are the ladies jealous that I am to be his queen and they are not to be, she thought as he began to untie the ribbon. "In the sight of the Seven, I hereby seal these two souls, binding them as one for eternity." Before he faced them both. "Look upon each other and say the words." They faced each other. And Lyanna said the words of a wedding of a faith that she did not worship, for still she held on to the old gods and would make trips to the godswood of the Red Keep even when queen. Father. Warrior. Smith. Mother. Maiden. Crone. Stranger, they said together. I am hers and she is mine. From this day, until the end of my days. I am his and he is mine. From this day until the end of my days. Aegon nervously gulped before he turned to face all those gathered in the Great September. With this kiss, I pledge my love. He leant in and began to kiss her gently on the lips. Gods, he is a good kisser. Could that be from his mother being a Martell? Mother did admit just how adventurous and explorative she was as a girl in the Water Gardens. Now a Septon stood before the High Septon, bowing to him as he presented a small box, containing the Queen's crown. Lyanna, knowing what she had to do, knelt before the High Septon. He placed the crown on her head, thankfully being careful to not ruin the braids which she, Serena and Mother had worked hard to do. Before he let go of the crown. Arise, Queen Lyanna Targaryen of House Stark, and stand by your king in times of peace and prosperity, hardship and strife. As Lyanna stood up straight and held Aegon's hand once again, there was cheering and applause. All gathered in the Great September applauded as the two walked down the Great September together. Whilst Aegon and Lyanna held hands and walked down the aisle together until they reached the balcony, overlooking the grounds down below. And from where they had a clear view of all the small folk below. All who cheered as they waved at them. Lyanna. She turned to face Aegon at hearing him say her name. She asked. I just wanted to say that I promise that I shall always be good to you and honor you as my wife and as my queen always. Lyanna beamed at his words as they held hands. She lifted his hand to her lips before kissing it. How can a queen ever say no to that, she asked. He blushed as she lowered his hand, at which she giggled. He is a good man. I can see that. I can see myself being happy with him. The end.